everyone, to another episode of What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. What's Working is brought to you by Regions. The focus of this show, if you don't already know, workplace and workforce trends. Our goal is to uncover the trends in the businesses that we interview and see how they're being shaped. These businesses are being shaped by the trends that are influencing them so that we can better understand the trends and apply them to our own businesses, our own worlds in some way or another. Let's start this show in the Wayback Machine. I was a child, maybe preteen. I would hunt with my cousins and my uncle in the Mobile River Delta on the marshes during the wintertime, and bundled up in clothes in hip boots or waders, walking around on those marshes, snipe hunting. Now, I know what you're thinking, Kim. There's no such thing as a snipe. You're sitting in there. They're playing a very elaborate joke on you. No, there is. And I was hunting them and shot them in the Mobile River Delta. And every now and then, walking through this marshy, muddy stuff, we called it gumbo. Walking through the gumbo, a nutria would bust up and come out from under the undergrowth and try to get away. And I was instructed immediately by my uncles and cousins to shoot it. These things are tearing up the delta. They're eating things and they don't have any natural predators. Shoot it. And I did. Now, that was back in the day I hadn't done anything like that in a long time. Not many nutria in the Mobile River Delta from what I've seen, and I am by no means an expert on this. There are probably some. But when they began protecting the alligators, the nutria population fell as the alligator population grew. And those alligators out there were, for a period of time, well fed on nutria. Not so in Louisiana. Louisiana has a nutria problem. In fact, if I understand this correctly, they have a bounty out on nutria, and you can get paid for providing nutria to the Fish and Wildlife Service. We'll learn more about that as we get our guests on the show. All right, so that's the Wayback Machine. Going into a less of a Wayback Machine, not me as a preteen, but me just a handful of years ago at a networking event in New Orleans. And there was a guy there who came up and introduced himself to me. I'd just given a short presentation. He introduced himself to me, and he told me about his business, and I haven't forgotten about it. They take the nutria that are harvested in New Orleans and turn them into dog treats. They're called Marsh Dog, and they take these nutria and process them into dog treats, like kind of an elite, high-end, premium dog treat. Now, one of the trends that undoubtedly is going through our society, and it has not impacted all of us, all businesses, but there have been many that have benefited, is the elevated position of the dog in the family. When I was a child, the dog stayed outside. My father tells me when he was a child, the dog stayed in a pen. It was never let out. It was a hunting dog. It had a utility to it. Now we kind of, in my household, ask the dog if it's okay to do things. We ask the dog if we could step by. The dog is on the furniture a lot of the time. I don't like that, but on the furniture a lot of the time. The dog has taken almost a royal role in the household. And of course, people feed their dogs better food than they eat themselves. And they feed them wild game. You see this, one of these dog food brands talks about the amount of wild game and meats that are in the dog food. And I'm thinking, gosh, I can't afford to eat that myself, but they're feeding it to their dog. Well, we're going to learn the story, and this is a great story, of an organization out of New Orleans, or Baton Rouge actually, that is in the nutria business. They help harvest the nutria. They buy the nutrias from the bounty hunters on nutria, and they turn it into dog food. The guy we're going to talk to in just a moment is Hansel Harlan. He's the guy I met in New Orleans at this networking event that told me a story I haven't forgotten in a long, long time. And I reached out to him just a couple of weeks ago saying, I'm not sure you're going to remember me, but I remember our conversation, and I'd love to have it again on this radio show. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. What's Working is brought to you by Regions. When we get back, Hansel Harlan and his company is Marsh Dog out of Baton Rouge. Nutria into dog treats. Why not?
Even if we don't meet in person, Regions is still here for you. We make it easier for you to stay informed and in control with online and mobile banking. You can check balances, transfer money, pay bills, deposit checks with Regions Mobile Deposit, and even set up helpful alerts no matter where you are. We're here to make it easier to bank your way. Learn more at regions.com/tools. Regions Bank, member FDIC.
A cool thing happened back in '64. That's when Keith Air Conditioning opened their doors.
In my family, turn to the experts is more than a tagline. It's a promise. Every Keith technician is an experienced AC professional, and that saves you money. Speaking of money, how about 0% financing for up to 60 months on installations of new Carrier systems? Keith and Carrier, turn to the experts.
Mobile's leading name in comfort since 1964.
License number 83731.
The best, most cost-efficient ways to talk to customers about who you are and what you do is through signs. Simple, effective signs. Hi, I'm Cam Marston, host of What's Working. Signorama is the Mobile area's leader in helping you design and build signs advertising your business. What kinds? All kinds of signs. All kinds. Find Signorama on Facebook or at signorama-mobile.com.
Think about how people really see you. The kid at the drive-thru just sees a coffee drinker.
Please pull forward.
Your local barista sees the person who loves a smiley face in their latte.
See you next time.
It's kind of the same way with insurance. Other insurance companies just see a customer, but a State Farm agent sees more. They see you as a neighbor. Your State Farm agent is here to get to know who you really are, so they can help life go right.
Call me, State Farm agent Allison Horner, in Mobile at 666-1616.
We are back. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. What's Working is brought to you by Regions. On the line with me is Hansel Harlan. Hansel is a guy I met in New Orleans many years ago now. I can't forget his story. It's lodged in my head because it's so fascinating. Hansel, thank you so much for your time. Welcome to What's Working.
You're very welcome. Thanks. It's nice to be here.
All kinds of strange things come out of South Louisiana. Let's face it. It's a hotbed of strangeness that people like me absolutely adore, and your story is one that kind of rises to the top. You buy Nutria and turn it into dog treats in the most simplest of terms. Is that correct?
That's the operation.
Tell me about this. Tell me the story.
Well, it started in, I guess it germinated in the late 80s. I was in grad school in Buenos Aires, Argentina. And it was there that I first learned that Nutria were not indigenous to Louisiana.
Yeah.
I had always grown up thinking that they were part of Louisiana's wild population, like crawfish or tarpon or what have you. But that's when I first learned that they were brought up here for their fur in the early 1900s. So when I returned from Argentina, I always sort of kept that weird trivial fact in my mind, but that was right about the time, this was the late 1980s, when the bottom fell out of the fur industry for various reasons. Domestic fur consumption had dropped off precipitously, given sort of an increased awareness of treatment of wild animals and such like that. And there were some various other reasons that played into it. So the fur industry, which had kept the Nutria population in check for decades, disappeared. So that check on their populations allowed them to go wild.
Yeah.
So when they procreate like rabbits, I mean, the numbers are pretty amazing. They can have 3 litters per year. Each litter, it can be up to 12 to 14 babies. And each of those babies reaches sexual maturity in about 3 months. So I'm a lawyer, not a mathematician, so don't hold me to the math, but you can quickly see that the extrapolation goes pretty quickly.
Yeah, it does. It sounds like South Louisianians themselves.
That's exactly right. So that was the time when they were running through Louisiana, they were running through the wetlands, and they were absolutely devouring it, because what they do, in addition to make babies, is eat marsh grasses. And marsh grasses create the vegetative mat that holds the coastline together, and the coastline and the wetlands together. Once that vegetative mat is removed, you just have exposed earth, and that earth is then washed away as the tidal forces move the water back and forth. So Louisiana was experiencing a pretty considerable land loss from various factors, from the oil industry and different factors, and the Nutria were exacerbating that problem. So Louisiana figured out that it needed to do something and do something quick because they were losing a lot of ground per year. So they ran through a couple of options. The first was, we'll just go in there and nuke them all, right? We're just going to poison them and put down this high-grade killing chemical that's going to take care of the problem. And it would have taken care of the problem, but it also would have decimated, a good portion of our fauna in the wetlands. So that was quickly rejected. Then someone came up with the idea of, well, we can create another industry like the fur industry, and that being an industry that was designed to trap them and feed them to humans, because the meat is pretty good. It's sort of like squirrel. It doesn't really have a natural taste to it, but if you mix it with a sauce piquante or what have you, it's definitely good. And that went pretty good. A lot of effort and money went into trying to get that off of the ground. I mean, millions of dollars.
I remember some of these notorious New Orleans restaurants trying to put Nutria on the menu and convince the discerning consumer that it is indeed a delicacy. And when they asked about it, it boiled down to a sort of swamp rat, and it kind of lost its charm.
Which is, it has some negatives, and that's one of them. People will look at them, and since they look similar to a rat, people think they are a rat, so they get a negative perception in their mind.
Yeah.
Plus, at the very time, if you remember Sheriff Harry Lee in Jefferson Parish?
No.
A real boisterous Asian American sheriff. Yeah. He was quite a character. And the Nutria were causing problems in the canals in Jefferson Parish. They were burrowing into the embankment, and as they would burrow into the embankment, the water would move in and out. It would cause soil subsidence, and it was just creating problems. So at the same time that the state was marketing these Nutria for human consumption, and as you recall, talking about how delicious they were, he got his SWAT team to go out during the night in the canals and shoot them. Yeah. And he would appear on TV talking about how his guys were going and killing these giant rats in the canals. Yeah. Sort of undermining the state's efforts to market it for human consumption.
Right.
Regardless, for whatever reason, it didn't get off the ground, and it didn't work. So then the state went straight to the bounty program, where they would just pay hunters and trappers to go out, kill them, bring in the tails, and they'd pay a bounty.
Right.
Well, I was watching this develop in the newspaper over a couple of years, and I at the time I had a dog that had food allergies. Around that time, what they would use in filler for the most common thing they use in filler in dog food was either corn, soy, or wheat, which are not part of dogs' natural diet, right, and therefore can provoke sort of allergic reactions in the animals. And my dog was going through that, so I was having to make this. At that time, you couldn't find grain-free dog food, so I was making my own dog food made out of brown rice and turkey. And I was reading in the paper about how this Nutria was very similar to turkey in its protein content and fat content. And it just sort of flashed through my mind, well, why aren't they making dog food out of this? So I talked to my sister about it, and we thought it would be a great idea. And it was about that time, or shortly thereafter, that we saw a grant solicitation from the Barataria Terrebonne National Estuary Program, which is a organization or venture that was set up by the federal and state government for each of the estuaries across the United States. And they give out these mini grants to people who have good ideas to try to deal with problems that are plaguing the particular estuary. So we talked and we said, well, why don't we fill out a grant application, tell them we want to make dog treats out of Nutria and see what happens. And we did it, sent it in, and the next thing you know, they said, "Congratulations, you won. Here's $15,000. When are you going to start?" And we said, "Oh, shoot."
Right.
Where exactly do we start?
Be careful what you ask for.
So my family had, after generations back, my family made Barks root beer, invented Barks root beer with the Bark family. So we grew up in the bottling industry, and we sort of were familiar with the process of manufacturing a food product for consumption. You know, you get the raw materials, you bring them in, you process them, you get the ingredients, you market it, you distribute it. So we sort of took what we had learned growing up and superimposed it over the Nutria process and got started.
Suddenly. And when you started, your website shows this, you guys were the darling of the media for a long time. I mean, you've been on, I think USA Today has done a profile on you all. It's just in a number, even the New Yorker has done a profile on it. Of course, the apex of your achievement is right here, right now with me.
Well, of course.
But you guys found a lot of attention as a result of this. Did you see the consumer respond in the same way?
We did. One of the things that we've learned is that in this industry, it is highly, highly competitive. So it's all about setting yourself apart. And the story that we had behind our company, you know, especially in the wake of Hurricanes Katrina and Rita and the devastation that had hit the wetlands down there and the Macondo spill or leak or whatever it was called.
Yeah.
Really help us attract national media attention, which greatly helped us to grow and get support from the general populace.
So do you know that your customer is a exceedingly loyal customer to your dog treats? Do you track them that way?
That's what we have found.
And they love it. And the pets obviously love it as well.
They do.
Yeah. So I'm curious if the nutria problem in the estuaries is still there. There's obviously still a bounty on them, but is the destruction as widespread as it once was?
One of the problems is the success of the Nutria Control program, because it has been very good. And one of the things that people will say is, well, we don't see the destruction down there anymore. Well, it's because the Nutria Control program is doing such a good job in taking these numbers out. You know, the problem is that the problem doesn't go away. Mm-hmm. So what the Nutria Control program is doing is mowing the grass every year.
Interesting.
Each year, year after year. So what they have to do to mow the grass is knock out about 400,000 nutria per year in Louisiana to keep the population stable.
Wow, that sounds like a lot.
That is a lot.
That sounds like a lot. I remember growing up in the Mobile Delta, where there were nutria out there, but now I don't go out there much. There may be listeners who may correct me here instantly, but I don't go out there much. But it doesn't seem to be the problem it once was. And from what I was told, it's because they let the alligators grow. And the alligators, once they came back after being shot for years, started feeding on the nutria. That's not happening in South Louisiana, huh?
I think it's probably due to the particular habitat. You know, I speak with the guys over at Department of Wildlife and Fisheries a lot about this, and it's really sort of odd how some areas they really proliferate and other areas they don't. I don't know whether it's a combination between particular vegetation that's available or the ability to be able to hide, or the alligator population, or what. But for example, in the Barataria Terrebonne estuary, which is basically that slice of the pie between the Atchafalaya River running down central Louisiana to the coast, the Mississippi River running down the southeasterly portion of the state, that slice in there that's bounded on the south by the coast is the area where they're really populous. Western Louisiana, for whatever reason, not so much.
Yeah. Let's take a break. I want to ask you about the process of getting these animals and how you process them and how they actually wind up in pet food stores. Let's talk about how you make the sausage, for lack of a better term, when we get back. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. What's Working is brought to you by Regions. On the line with me, Hansel Harlan, Marsh Dog Foods.
I'm Matt Armbruster with Ransom Ministries. We help people in our community that most others have given up on. Please donate your unwanted electronics to Ransom Recycling. We teach life skills, job readiness, and job creation through our electronic recycling program. We take anything with a cord. Find us at ransomministries.com, or you can call us at 251-751-0044.
Human Resource Departments spend countless hours on insurance billing mistakes, Obamacare rules, and compliance. Employee benefits serve the purpose of recruiting, retaining, and rewarding employees. We can handle all of your benefit needs with cost-effective products, employee enrollments, and handle your HR issues. Benefit admin doesn't have to be complicated. My name is Michael Cowart Jr. of the Cowart Group, and we specialize in helping businesses with their employee benefit packages. Visit cowartassociates.com.
That's the sound of rush hour. Hello, recess. Mom! Work from home is a lot of work. Even though we're a little further apart right now, we're still in this together. Regions is donating this ad to local food banks to shine a light on them as they feed our neighbors in need. Learn how you can help or get help at regions.com/foodbank. Regions Bank, member FDIC.
I'm David Nelson, brewmaster and owner of Braided River Brewing. We want beer that goes along no matter where the adventure takes us and that doesn't make us choose between great beer and drinkability. We're drawn to the Delta and united by beer because to us, the best way to celebrate the Delta is to slow down and savor the moments and the beer together. Come visit our tap room in downtown Mobile and ask for us at your favorite bar or restaurant. Visit online at braidedriverbrewing.com.
We're back. Hansel Harlan is on the line with me, talking to me about frankly, I think it's an ingenious idea of helping the state of Louisiana with the nutria problem by turning these rodents, they're rodents, aren't they?
They are rodents.
Turning these rodents into dog treats. And goodness knows, I see what my dog eats, and she doesn't care what it is. As long as it smells right, she'll eat it. And so, Hansel, take me through the process. We know that these things are prolific. They're trapped. And what happens after that?
Well, what we do is we contract with the individual trappers down there, and then we have a relationship with an aggregator, for lack of a better word, who serves as collection points for us. Those carcasses are brought in, they're skinned. The furs used to be sold, some in the U.S. and a lot in internationally, primarily Eastern Europe, but not so much anymore in recent years. And then the carcasses are brought in, the large bones are taken out, they're ground up to the consistency of like a ground meat, and then they are shipped off to a national pet food manufacturer up north who magically turns them into treats for us and sends them back.
Did you set the recipe for the treat?
We did. Originally, the recipe was developed by yours truly after a lot of trial and error.
Golly, I don't even want to hear that story. I don't want to hear how you figured out what the recipe needs to taste like.
As a side note, that's a way for us to overcome the stigmatization of the animal when we're talking to prospective customers about how delicious and wonderful this treat is. They sort of are taken aback over the image, so we pull out a treat and take a bite of it, and if it's good enough for us, it's good enough for our dog.
My goodness. Hats off to you. Yet another reason to respect what it is that you've done. Good enough for humans. Dog treats good enough for humans.
There you go.
Yeah. So tell me what ingredients go into it other than the nutria.
Well, we have 3 different recipes right now. One is brown rice and sweet potato. One is blueberry, and one is cranberry.
Well, I got to stop you right there. Blueberry? Blueberry?
Blueberry, that's correct.
So you got a dog eating nutria with blueberry flavors.
That's exactly right.
Which seems to be the dog's favorites, and how do you know?
Well, I personally think the Nutria, no, my dogs like the Nutria and Blueberry best, but it's the crunchy treat. The other two are the soft treats. So, and the Nutria and Blueberry has the highest fat content, highest meat content in them.
Yeah.
So, and I'd like to think that my terriers can sense that.
Yeah, we'd like to think that. And do they dehydrate the meat for you?
They cook it yes, they do. It's a dehydration technique for the hard treat.
Yeah, and then they send it back, and it's sealed in these pouches, right?
These individual bags that are designed by my graphic design / partner sister, who did a wonderful job with it. Each of the bags shows a different marsh vegetation that's imperiled by the Nutria.
So tell me about your distribution is heavy in Louisiana. You've got one distribution site in Alabama, some in Mississippi. Is your hope to get distribution up, or are you guys about at the limit of what you can supply?
No, we can do a lot more. We've been talking to national distributors, but that's sort of the growing pains that's involved in getting a small company to be able to play in a big pond with the bigger fish.
Yeah.
Most, our margins are a lot different from Purina or Nestle or all of these other large companies who can produce so less expensively or so more inexpensively than us, that it creates particular challenges for us in growing to become a regional or national brand.
So you're a boutique product, would you say?
That's correct.
Yeah. And do any of these national brands, I do business with Mars, they're a huge pet food supplier. Do any of them have desire to own a boutique brand like yours? Or you only want to you want to get into PetSmart, but their first order would crush you?
Well, you have to be careful. There's multiple channels in the pet food, pet treat world. There's sort of the low cost mass production channel, and then there's the higher cost, more boutique channel, and then there's sort of an in between. We were designing ourselves to be in that top channel, which is a tough channel to be in because your costs are going to be high, which may dissuade people once you start getting out of Louisiana, and the individual or the unique story that we have may carry less appeal to someone in, say, Idaho.
Sure.
Right.
Sure. They got their own problems. They want to harvest goose or something like that on their golf courses or something.
Right.
Interesting. So what's next for you guys? Where there's a conversation that's waiting, and I want to talk to you about what I remember us talking about in New Orleans, which is the fur and the Eastern Europe and the things of that nature, because that's fascinating. But what's next? What's next for Marsh Dog?
Well, we've signed on with smaller regional distributors right now, and we are expanding into about 8 states currently with sales to retailers. We're still distributing direct via direct consumer sales, across all 50 states and internationally. But we feel that our best bet is to get on the shelves of independent pet retailers and vet clinics. So that's our goal, and that's what we're moving towards. So the next thing logistically is get ready for the upcoming Nutria season and get my trappers lined up and start buying some meat. This would be a great reality TV show. I don't know that they do the alligator show from South Louisiana anymore like they used to, but this would be a good reality TV show. Have you been approached for anything like that before? Yes, we have.
You have, really?
Yeah, we have.
Tell me about that.
Well, it's just, it's a little hard for us to work with them because our sort of supply chain is so fractionalized. It's not, contrary to what I thought may have happened once we won that grant, it's not me down in the swamps catching the Nutria.
Right.
But a lot of the trappers that we've dealt with, we've sent field crews out with them, and they eat it up. They love it.
Oh, I bet they do. Do you same trappers every year? Yeah, I suspect you've got some guys that are loyal to you or that you've worked with for a while, and they provide you with the good stuff.
Generally, that's right. And each one of them has an individual story. Some of them will go out for like a week or two at a time. They go to some ramshackle shack in the 40 miles from nowhere and just go out in the evenings and catch them and bring them in, and day after day.
Wow. Yeah. That's amazing. What an amazing life. And is this a full-time job for these guys, or you said there's trapping seasons, so it can't be a full-time job?
Which is one of the challenges that we have in our operation, is that we can only get our meat for the whole year from November through March, which is the season.
Yeah. Yeah.
You may ask, well, why is there a season on Nutria if they're so bad?
That's a good point.
It's because the traps are indiscriminate, and we do have native fur-bearing species such as beaver or river otter or mink that they don't want to decimate. We want to protect those.
Yeah, so you have to regulate the season. In Alabama, and I know in Louisiana as well, they have the feral hogs, and those things do bad stuff to the land as well. And there is no season on those, to my knowledge. I'm probably perhaps
no.
showing my hand here a little bit. There's no season on those. Anytime you can get them is a good time to take them. So that's interesting there. Is there a minimum size of the nutria that they have to trap, or is it anything?
They can bring in anything.
Yeah. Interesting. All right. So one of the conversations that I've been waiting to queue up is the fur. Because when we talked, you were sending the fur to, I want to say, again, memory may not serve, Eastern Europe, where people were taking that fur and it holds a dye well, and they were turning it into like cheetah coats and giraffe coats and things like that, making it look like fur from one of these African animals, but actually it's from a Louisiana nutria.
The stories that have come out of our experience in this project have been utterly jaw-dropping, and that's one of them. I mean, you could write a book on the Nutria Fur industry. One of the unique qualities of Nutria Fur is that the individual pieces of hair, or the individual, what do you call it, strands of hair.
A follicule.
Yeah, that's right. There you go. They have little indentations on them that allow the hair to trap minuscule air bubbles on it, which serve, I'm not sure whether it increases the buoyancy of the animal, who spends 90% of its life in the water, but it does insulate them and make it a little bit warmer for them during the winter months when they're in the water. And so, coincidentally, one of the unintended benefits of that small little pocket is that it allows this hair, as opposed to the hair of other fur-bearing animals, to retain a dye much better. So Nutria Fur is renowned for being able to be colored or treated in various ways, which may make it more marketable to consumers. And so what was happening with the fur is that a lot of people from East, a lot of buyers, and they were aspiring sort of middle-class entrepreneurs from a lot of the recently liberated Soviet bloc countries, which are usually your stands, Turkmenistan and Uzbekistan.
Right.
They knew about this particular quality of the Nutria Fur. So they would come down to South Louisiana, I guess, fly into New Orleans, and then get in a rental car and drive down to wherever, Galliano or Empire or any of these sort of coastal areas. So, get a place in a Motel 8 and then go to our aggregators that we were working with down there to inspect the furs and get them, buy them, bring them back over, have them shipped back over to where the country from whence they came. And then what would happen is in those countries, which are not quite as developed as we are, the fur is still a big status symbol in those countries. So the oligarchs in those countries that controlled, natural gas for the entire country or the milk supply for the entire country, they would have these big, extravagant, full-length coats of animal fur. And usually, unfortunately, your status was measured by the uniqueness or the rarity of the furs. So they would bring, they would have a cheetah or snow leopard or what have you, which is terrible in and of itself. But the people would look at them and you could immediately tell, oh my gosh, that guy made it. He's very successful. So these middle-class entrepreneurs were taking these Nutria Fur, dyeing them to look like ocelot or gazelle or what have you, and then going out selling it kind of like knockoff Gucci bags.
This is fantastic. Let's pick this up after the break, Hansel. I got to take a break. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. What's Working is brought to you by Regions. We're going to hear more about the uses of these Nutria Fur in the stand countries when we get back.
Do you have a plan to protect your income if you can't work? We'd all like to believe that we'll never be disabled, but the reality is it could happen to you. And if it does, will your income be protected, your family be cared for? Richard Otts has served the Gulf Coast since 1997. If you'd like more information about disability insurance, contact Richard, 251-342-8917. That's 251-342-8917.
Even if we don't meet in person, Regions is still here for you. We make it easier for you to stay informed and in control with online and mobile banking. You can check balances, transfer money, pay bills, deposit checks with Regions Mobile Deposit, and even set up helpful alerts no matter where you are. We're here to make it easier to bank your way. Learn more at regions.com/tools. Regions Bank, member FDIC.
This is Cam Marston, host of What's Working. Jim Mitchell and his team at Signorama have provided all types of signage for nearly every event I've been a part of for years. I know his team's creativity, their multitude of products, and how easy they are to work with. His No Mistake Signorama is South Alabama's marketplace leader. Find Signorama on Facebook, call 634-0100, or visit next to Mullinex Ford on Airport Boulevard. We're back. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. What's Working is brought to you by Regions. Hansel Harlan is in the middle of a story, and I'm probably going straight to hell for cutting him off in the middle of this story. But he's telling the story about the furs that come off the nutria and that are sent to Eastern Europe and then dyed to be knockoff animal furs to make people look affluent. Is that right? Pick it up there.
That's it. So you could have these people who are of minimal means, maybe they worked in a factory or what have you, who could save their money and then have this beautiful purple ocelot coat, just like the rich oligarch who was running the country. And it would enable them to go off and show off their status within the various areas where they would go. And that's one of the unique uses of Nutria Fur that was happening until recently.
So I want to hear what's changed recently. So it's conceivable at a party of some sort, and we'll pick one, Turkmenistan, someone walks up to someone else and says, oh my gosh, that is a beautiful snow leopard fur. And they'll say, thank you very much. Whereas in truth, it is a Louisiana nutria dyed to look like a snow leopard fur.
You've stated it perfectly.
It's just amazing. Just amazing. Have you ever seen one of these that has come back to you, dyed like that?
I haven't seen the coat, but I have seen the furs when they've been dyed. And
yeah.
They look pretty, they don't look like they've been dyed. They look like it's a real different animal.
So are they buying the furs back when this happened? And again, I want to talk about what's changed. Did they buy the furs from you, or did they buy the furs from the trapper and you took the meat?
They were buying it from the aggregator. So we work with other people down there.
Yeah. Unbelievable. So what's changed? What's changed to cause this wonderful story to come to an end?
Well, that story, the whole fur industry in Louisiana, now there's really no one buying fur anymore because the domestic market dried up pretty quickly. Even the novelty people that were using it sort of as guilt-free fur, right? We have to go out and trap and kill these animals anyway. So it's not like we're raising them specifically to kill them for their fur. Even those areas in those industries in the U.S. have dried up. Internationally, I think with the economic problems that have plagued the world climate, have sort of made the cost of goods or furs from the United States more expensive. Number one. Number two, they came up with they developed mink farms over there. And they were raising their own mink populations, and they could do it so much more cheaply than the Nutrias that it didn't make monetary sense for them to come over here, buy them, bring it back to compete with the local inexpensive mink. Now, what had happened was those countries over there aren't doing very well, so even the domestic demand for mink fell off pretty precipitously. So the mink farmers over there have been cannibalizing their breeding stock. So over the last few years, so they've just about worked all the way through that breeding stock. And it was hoped that once they did, the demand for Louisiana Nutria would increase again. But COVID has really put kibosh on the international trade, specifically with regard to animal products being transshipped internationally. So everyone is not so sure how that's going to pan out. But regardless, the point being that the Louisiana fur industry has been hit pretty hard.
The Louisiana fur industry. Now, did you ever think that when you graduated from law school that you would know the ability of a nutria hair to retain a dye, and that you'd know that oligarchs in places like Turkmenistan want to wear a snow leopard jacket made out of Louisiana nutria? Was this ever a part of the plan?
I would have lost my house in a bet if I would have been asked that question.
I know. It's so interesting. It's absolutely a fascinating tale. Now, I feel like I've heard the story that nutria entered the United States through the Tabasco family. Is there any truth to that? They were, in addition to raising these peppers, they were trying to get in the fur industry, and a hurricane blew up and knocked down all the cages and released the nutria that they had been brought up from South America, and that's how they came to North America. Is there any truth to that?
The McElhaney's did import nutria as breeding stock to create a little small fur industry. About that, they were then subsequently, when the nutria started causing so much damage, they became the villains of the story. And it was like, oh, the McElhaney's brought them.
Yeah.
Now the McElhaney's have done so well. They have a family historian who's gone back and researched all the intricacies of their operations in Louisiana. He has gone back and found other families who brought nutria into Louisiana before the McElhaney's did. So the general consensus is that they are not solely to blame.
Yes. But if I had a family historian that I had on the payroll, I would pretty much presume to control the outcome of whatever research they do. If they're gonna be the Marston family historian, I'm gonna let them know, here's the history I want you to research, and here's the outcome that I want you to support. So, and I don't doubt it. It's just interesting is all I got to say. It's just interesting.
Their credibility may be questioned on the stand.
Yes, exactly. Exactly, says the attorney. All right. So there are people listening to this going, I love this story. I love what they're about. How do I find this stuff? I assume people, and just as I ask you this question, the wireless signal in my office here has vanished, so I can't actually surf as I ask you this question. How do they get their hands on your stuff?
If you are outside of Louisiana, the easiest way to do so is to go to marshdog.com, one word, and place your order for one or more bags of any of our 3 treats, and we'll get it out to you immediately.
Yeah.
If you're in Louisiana, you can go to most independent retail pet stores carry us. In New Orleans, Jefferson Feed, in Baton Rouge, Neighborhood Pets, and all of the other retailers are listed on our website.
Yeah, and I'm thinking now about the packaging. The packaging has got to tell the story because you've got so many other competitors lined up right next to you on that aisle. The packaging has to tell the story, doesn't it?
It sure does.
Yeah. You can't make them listen to this radio show before they buy. They've got to look at the package and get that story. That's got to be very clever to do, which means that graphic designer sister of yours got to be pretty good at what she does.
That's exactly right. It has to set itself aside in some form or fashion, and we think that the story, but, we have to attract the eye to it on the shelf first. And that is, if you go down and take a look at it from a marketing perspective in a pet store, you will just be overwhelmed by all the different imagery that you will get. So we feel that we've come up with some unique packaging which will draw people in and let them learn our story and learn that we use superior quality ingredients, and then hope that that does the trick to get them to get our treats in their dog's mouth.
Yeah, well, I love the story, and I loved it so much. I remembered it from whenever you and I met 5-6 years ago, maybe. Every part of it, I thought it was fascinating, and I'm a fan. And Hansel, I want to thank you for your willingness to jump on this phone call with me and let us talk and hear your story. Thank you so much, my friend.
You're very welcome. I'll just close by sharing with you guys that our unofficial motto, so to speak, which came up when someone asked us, hey, what are you going to do when you kill all the nutria? We said, that's our mission, so put us out of business.
There we go. I love it. Put us out of business. Take this invasive species off our hands. Maybe after Nutria, you can take on kudzu and feed that to the dogs.
The list is long.
Hansel Harlan, folks. Thanks very much, Hansel.
Thanks. Have a great day.
You too. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. What's Working is brought to you by Regions. We'll be back after this break with final comments.
Do you sometimes wonder about different money topics, but struggle to find the answers? The Every Dollar Counts podcast with Gulf Coast experts Josh Knoll and Jay Stubbs is made for those folks serious about their financial plan and looking for answers. Josh and Jay dedicate their time to explaining the various services and products available, as well as discussing lifestyle and money interests of the modern-day family. Tune in to Every Dollar Counts on Apple Podcasts and everywhere else you get your favorite podcasts.
Hi, I'm Cam Marston, host of What's Working. My Carrier Infinity system is quiet, energy efficient, and runs like a dream. To keep it running smoothly, I rely on a maintenance plan from Keith Air Conditioning. With a Keith maintenance plan, your home or business receives discounts and 24/7 priority service. Give Keith Air Conditioning a call today at 251-476-3610 or visit keithair.com. Keith and Carrier. Turn to the experts.
What's Working with Cam Marston is brought to you by Stella Artois Beer. Stella Artois is a perfect beer for celebration. Nothing caps off a big sale, hitting your incentive goals, or a profitable quarter like a round of Stella's. Brewed first in 1708 as a special Christmas brew, today Stella is a gift for everyone to enjoy year-round. Stella Artois. Find it wherever fine beer is sold.
Life insurance is one of those subjects that make people want to change the subject rather than admit they probably don't have enough. I'm State Farm agent Allison Horner, and that's why I focus on how the benefits of life insurance actually live on by asking people to think in terms of life without having to sell the house insurance, or life without having to give up college insurance. Find out how the benefits of life insurance can live on for your family. Call me, State Farm agent Allison Horner, and get to a better state with State Farm.
You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. What's Working is brought to you by Regions. Hansel Harlan's website, if you didn't hear it, is marshdog.com, marshdog.com. It's on that website. You can see the write-ups they've had, the amount of national media that they've had. You can order those dog treats for yourself. I imagine they'll ship UPS. And if I'm not mistaken, it only takes you don't pay for overnight, but it'll get here the next day, UPS from Louisiana. Don't hold me to that, but you'll get it fairly quickly. Now, and I love the story. You can see why I remember the story from when I met him a handful of years ago or so in New Orleans. It was, I guess, back in April, maybe May, that I had Gare Maxwell on the show. Gare Maxwell is a branding expert, and he works with organizations on helping them to develop a memorable brand. And one of the things that he said in his interview that was one of the take-home points of his interview is you can either have one of two things happen. Number one, you can create your story that helps people remember your brand. Or number two, the story happens to you. And it's so much easier when the story happens to you, but it's it's less common to have the story happen to you. He told the long story of the Mona Lisa over in the Louvre in Paris and how the Mona Lisa wasn't famous until it was stolen. And when it was stolen, this is many, many, many years ago, it became famous because people wanted to understand how the thieves got into the museum and how they got it out of the museum, and the whole story of stealing and then recovering and returning the painting made the painting famous. The painting wasn't famous prior to being stolen. It was a nice piece of art that hung on the wall, Da Vinci piece of art hung on the wall, and anyone would be proud to have it. But it wasn't until it was stolen that its fame arrived. So the reason I'm saying this is the Mona Lisa had its story happen to it. When you get into Hansel Harlan's story about Marsh Dog, they are the story. They found the opportunity. And his story begins with, oh my gosh, they accepted our proposal. Here's $15,000. Now we got to do something with it. And at that point, the story becomes great. And I think the message here for any business owner, business leader, whatever it may be, is the story. You got to learn to tell your story, and you've got to make it interesting to other people. Hansel certainly is, the way they went about that and the ideas that they have, and I'm sure the tales that he could tell of meeting these trappers would be just as fascinating as anything else we heard. His is rich in stories, particularly I love the fur coats. That's one of my favorite parts of his story. It's so compelling. It's a kind of a side story to the whole thing. But again, it makes me more interested in the product itself. The story. Gosh, so many businesses and so many successful companies, whatever it may be, have been developed based on a compelling story, particularly those that have products available retail, where you and I can just walk up to the shelf and grab it and say, I love this company and what it is that they do. That story has been so important. All right. That should wrap it up. Another show. Incidentally, Marsh Dog Treats, Hansel's company, is available all over social media. You can go find them on Instagram and Facebook and all that kind of stuff. And you can do the same for us. We continue to give efforts to increase our presence and our relevance on all the social media. Extraordinary the amount of time it takes to do this type of thing. I'm always surprised. But you'll find What's Working with Cam Marston on Instagram and Facebook. You'll find us on Twitter. We do our best to remain active and give you insights into what we're working on. So please check us out, follow us, click us, do all that kind of stuff that you know is so good for us. And if you're listening to this show via iTunes, don't forget to rate us. Those ratings matter more than I think they should, but they matter nevertheless. Show is brought to you by John Thompson. He's the show producer with Ion Digital. Kristen Ogden helps us organize these shows and get everybody lined up. Thanks, everybody. Have a good week. We'll have another show for you next week.